reality check, making industry partnerships work, and it is about collaboration between industry and vet. My name is Vicky Gattado, and I'll be the host for today. I'm PSO's Chief Operations Officer and also very proud to be the executive sponsor of this program. And up front, before we go into it, I would like to give my utmost thanks to Deborah Morris, Melissa Arnold, Fazanta here for what they have built here for those in the vet sector, and the assistance given by Kyra as well, who's helping us host today. Thank you very much. You know, as the executive sponsor, it's been an absolute pleasure working with this team and seeing their thoughts and their imagination come to life. So well done to that team. And today's question is a practical one. How do we build industry vet partnerships that actually work in the real world, that are easier to start, clearer to manage, and genuinely valuable for both sides? We know collaboration between industry and training providers is essential for workforce readiness. We also know that it is not easy. It can depend on individual relationships, unclear expectations, limited time, and energy spent on duplication rather than delivery. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners, custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. And I am currently on Turrbal country that is in Brisbane, Queensland. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. So we're recording. Please put your cameras on. It is hard to talk to a room full of initials. So please, I would love to have your calendar. Doesn't even matter if you're eating. So your cameras on would be great. It gives us, we can see your reactions. It gives us something to react to. We can see if you're bored, all those sort of things. So really encourage you to put your cameras on, and you know it's really good to put face to the industry out there. Thank you very much. And also you're all on mute. So if you do want to ask a question today, there's a Q&A function at the top of the screen you can ask a question of, and the team from PSO will interrupt us at any time if you've got a question, a burning platform that you wish to discuss or ask a question of the panel members here today. There's also the chat function, so please put in there and we can see if we've got time to, hopefully we've got time to answer them today. So I'm sort of, I've got multiple screens here. I'm sort of controlling it from this screen. I've got other things on that screen. So apologies if I look like I'm looking all around the room. So today I'm going to introduce you to the panel. We're going to talk a bit about why we're here. There's some questions, key questions we're going to ask. And then we've also got time for a bit of a Q&A and we'll close the end of the day. So that's what we've got planned for today. I've introduced myself, but today we want to hear what partnerships look like right now for the people on our panel, where it works, where it doesn't, and what it would take to make it more practical and more sustainable. We are particularly interested in real stories from the ground. And I'm going to ask our panel to introduce themselves. Each person brings a different perspective, from large industry to specialist, private RTO, from a major TAFE to a national apprenticeship provider. And I will give each panelist about 30 seconds to introduce yourselves, your name, your role, and one sentence on what brings you to this conversation. And I'm going to start with you, Dr. Ross Digby. Over to you.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I really appreciate it. I'd like to acknowledge the owners of the lands on which I'm on today, being Wurundjeri and Burrarong people of the Kulin Nation. So Dr. Ross Digby, Associate Director for Industry Projects and Engagement at Holmesglen Institute. Previously, I headed up the Energy and Infrastructure Centre at Holmesglen, which included the Victorian Tunnelling Centre and our ESI training yards, which had a range of very large projects with industry associated with our Victoria's Big Build program, so the North East Link Tunnel, Suburban Rail Loop, Metro Tunnel projects. So my thoughts come from what I worked through with all of those different projects over the last 6 years at Holmesglen. So thank you, Vicky.
That's right. Okay, let's throw to Vicky Nichols from Alinta.
Thanks, Vicky, the other Vicky. Thanks so much, firstly, for having me here. I'm Vicky Nichols, and I lead the Future Workforce Learning and Development team at Alinta Energy. For me, this is a really important conversation because my role is all about building the capability that we need for now, but also preparing the workforce for what we need with regards to the energy transition and obviously the technology transition that's coming our way. I'm also fortunate enough to have worked on both sides of the fence. I spent a lot of time in the vet sector before I moved into industry and have worked in mining and energy for the last 15 years. So really happy to be here.
Welcome. Over to Renee.
Hi everyone, I'm Renee Briggs-Gordon, National Manager for Apprenticeships at APM. So I've actually been in the vet sector for a little bit too long, probably close to 20 years. And one of my passion is building relationships and collaboration with industry and RTOs to make great outcomes happen for everyone.
Excellent, thank you very much. And Lisa.
Thanks, Vicky. Hi, everyone. My name's Lisa Jeffrey. I'm the Manager Vet Workforce Capability here at CDU TAFE. A bit like Renee, I've been in vet a long time, so my origin story is as a trades lecturer in building design and drafting, and then I moved into the more academic practitioner role. And I have one of those everything jobs where I bring networks together and find the right people to do the right jobs. So on top of lecturing, I've also done a lot of training product specialist role work, and then now focus a lot on workforce capability and integrating all of that in partnership production. I've been involved in the early ideas generation of different partnerships, the scope co-design, probably the contract negotiation, and then the implementation reviews and monitoring of those contracts as they've gone through, and then converting them to business as usual sometimes. So a few touch points for everybody to draw from.
Excellent. Thank you, Lisa. Then finally, Chris.
Hi, everyone. Chris Hale from Skylar Education. So we're a private RTO. We specialise in training for renewable energy, specifically wind energy. So we're currently delivering training to the industry across Australia. We are the largest provider in this space at the moment. So, today we're bringing the expertise from clients through from, your wind turbine manufacturers through to your construction companies, right the way through to your crane and your end users. So look, we're very passionate about the industry. We're seeing a lot of challenges and changes on a day-to-day basis. So, we're looking to see where we can assist and help with some of the pipeline of workers that we know are out there and see if we can make some long-term change.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris, very much. And thanks to the panel. It's pretty great to have, I look at all your backgrounds really well thought out and from a diverse perspectives today. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. So first question is for Renee. And what is one thing the sector tends to underestimate about what it takes to make industry vet collaboration work in practice?
Great question. I think as a whole, we tend to underestimate the power of relationships and to truly get great outcomes through collaboration, it is ongoing relationship development. We often design collaboration as if it's a transaction, and leaning into Lisa and your background there, talking about, setting up agreements, relying on funding, service models, MOUs, and that's all great to lay the foundations, but this true success comes from that ongoing trust, and that shared accountability, and truly understanding the needs of all stakeholders involved. Employers, have different, drivers, with workforce development needs and productivity, while as, vet and training providers are coming from a compliance and framework perspective. And getting the two to marry and be a great collaborative outcome can often be fraught with obstacles that no one anticipates. So it's really, I think we really do underestimate that true account management, relationship management, and open communication.
And where have you seen good practice? Like, if you don't have to name names, but if you were to describe like what the ideal practice was in that sort of because you've got a bit of a tripartite relationship that fits. So what's good?
What's good is essentially allowing each of the parties to be the expertise in what they do. So from an apprenticeship service provider, if things are going astray, get us involved. We can often come in and bring it all back into line. And by placing the learner or the apprentice, trainee, what have you, in key to everything that we do, is really gets that best outcome. I, as I mentioned, have had a lot of experience within the sector, and I can tell you where things have gone excruciatingly wrong in the past, and that was by allowing complacency to come into play, thinking, okay, everything's fine, everything's ticking along nicely, only to find, you're 6 months into a really good workforce development program, to find that there's no engagement with the staff, that employers, and I'm certainly not blaming any party, they're not allowing that time for training, or the supervisors might be the blockage, or indeed the training that's being delivered is not meeting that expectation of what the employer is looking for. So, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly in anything that we do realistically. Yeah. Best practice is ongoing communication and and really reviewing it and continuous improvement practice.
So I'm going to throw to you now, Vicky, from being an employer with Alinta. So what do you find RTOs consistently underestimate about what is required from an organisation such as yours?
Look, I'll probably build on what's already been said around time. I think one of the things we constantly underestimate is, and I think within industry especially, is we don't allow the right resources from the start to be involved. So it's just the sideline to somebody's job that they're trying to do their main job during the day, and then have a successful collaboration on the side. We often talk about partnerships as if goodwill will just carry them through, but really we need to make sure that we've got the right people doing the right work at the right time to make that successful. One of the things I've also found, I mentioned in the opening, is I've worked on both sides, is often we can put the best of intent in here, but we're speaking a different language, which I think is already being brought up. So we're saying the same thing, but saying it differently, which often drags out the time that's required to do things. So by having clear accountability up front, really understanding what great looks like for both people, for both parties at the beginning, just makes such an enormous difference to the outcome. We all want the same thing, and we're often saying the same thing. We're just saying it slightly differently, which makes it challenging.
So, Chris, to you now. So what is the difference between a partnership that is genuinely useful to both sides and one that's just a symbolic MOU, for example?
Yeah, so look, don't get me wrong, those symbolic MOU and handshake agreements and nice photos and videos on social media, look, they're great, but realistically they're just a symbolic thing that are like, hey, look at us, we partner with X, but realistically they don't partner, they have done work for or had them come in and pay them for their service. So look, for us, a relevant partnership is pure collaboration. It is, let's sit down together, let's go through this together. Here's our perspective, here's your perspective. Now let's work on integrating this so that you get what you need from it, we get what we need from it, and let's continue to do this right along the way. And look, from us in the wind industry, the industry is rapidly changing. We're talking weekly, sometimes even daily. The changes are huge. So we have to have the collaboration with our clients, our partners. Otherwise, we're going to fall behind. We're going to be giving outdated information. We're going to be talking about outdated technology. We're going to be using outdated equipment. So look, we're massive on the collaboration. We integrate our collaboration not just from high level management. It's all the way down to the techs that are coming in and actually sitting in our training. We combine refresher groups with new groups, so we can have that collaboration of techs that have been in the industry for X amount of years that can put their experience into those newer people who are then going to be joining that industry and shaping what happens moving forward. So look, collaboration is massive. It's something that we're very proud of here at Skylar, that we collaborate with everyone from your one-man band who are a contractor out on site, all the way up through to your multinational mega billion-dollar companies that are actually building the equipment and then having their construction crews in as well. That gives us a lens across the whole industry and allows us to have full visibility of exactly what's going on and what's needed within industry.
So Chris, I'm an RTO and I'm maybe a fresh one, and I'm trying to find who I can collaborate with. Do I ring you up and go, hey Chris? Do I just ring you up and say, how do I reach out if I am an RTO and I want to reach out to a business? What's your advice?
Look, we've been very fortunate in creating our business and pushing ourselves towards the wind industry. So a lot of our partnerships have organically happened just due to the nature of the work. But look, we're reaching out to new companies as they come into the industry. Look, we get probably close to 100 different inquiries every week from new businesses in the industry, and every single one is treated exactly the same. We reach out to them. This is what we are. This is what we do. Let us know what you guys are about, and then we have a conversation from there. And look, some turn into great partnerships and some collaborations. Others not so much. They might be the hey, we're just wanting to work in this. What's your training like? Get me in, book my people in. So look, it's this industry is evolving incredibly fast, and all our guys keep their fingers on the pulse. We're out on site, so we might see some new contractors or new companies that are out there, and we're always connecting. Hey, we're Skylar. Here's our card. Anything you need, give us a call. This is what we're about. And look, I guess we're busybodies when we're out on site. It helps keep us above our competitors. It helps keeps us relevant, and we know that when people think about training in wind, they think about Skylar first, and that's what we're really excited about.
So Lisa or Dr. Digby, what have you got? You're from the RTO side. What have you got to add to this about partnerships that are genuinely useful?
Thanks, Vicky. I think both Renee and Vicky and Chris have mentioned a couple of key things that I would agree and reinforce. Having the right people in the conversation, having the time, the money, the resources, and the preparedness to focus on it are absolute gold pillars. One of the things that I've experienced, and I'll give you an example as well, is really understanding what problem it is that you're actually trying to solve. And it's often a couple of really robust conversations with those people where there's a lot of courage and trust to be able to really unpack what's actually going on. I had the opportunity to hear about a case study where an area of a population had been identified through big data as behaving illegally, and government wanting to change that. But actually, when the investigation and the co-design into it looked into it, it was a completely different problem that was causing the data that they were responding to. I was approached by an employer who was looking to address an EBA requirement to have staff upskilled in a trade area, and it was going to benefit their maritime registration with AMSA. But actually it turned out that they needed an entirely different solution that actually ended up bringing the Job Skills Council in to be able to look at the training product and the way that recognition of experience could be addressed to meet AMSA regulatory requirements. So the original bid for partnership evolved after about 3 conversations with some important input from different perspectives into an entirely different partnership in the long run.
I like the fact that you brought up the word trust. I think trust is really important, and I'm often impressed, especially in the Northern Territory, on the relationships that you're able to form up there. It seems like you've got very great camaraderie up in the Northern Territory. As you know, Brett Willer-White is part of our team, and you know, I could actually be anywhere in Australia and someone will walk in and go, "Hey, Brett, I've never seen anything like it." So, and it's all from the industry and him being at CDU and up in the Northern Territory, and that's great to see.
Yeah, thanks.
So, Dr. Digby, do you have anything to add about those partnerships? Because in Holmes-Glen, you've got heaps.
I think to start with, it's when you first enter the first meeting, it's about listening. Listen, and answer 3 questions, which is why they need the training, or what is the need, why, what is the actual training required, and how that training is going to be best delivered for them. And from those 3 questions, you can then build a value proposition. First of all, a value proposition around what you as a training provider can offer that organisation, and the value proposition, and you can work on the value proposition of why they want to work with you as an organisation, and start to bed that down. And from that starts to then build that strong base for a relationship.
And can you give any examples of war stories where you feel like, you know, that you learn a lesson about this?
There's probably a lot along the way over the years. I don't think there's anything perfect. I think with some of the tunnelling projects, understanding why they needed the training, what was needed, and how. I think early on in the piece we went in trying to be all things to all people, which is what the project, Metro Tunnel project, wanted to see. We needed to align our thinking and our delivery and our expertise to what was needed. So I think that's one of the things. You need to be really laser focused in terms of what your value proposition is to maximise the outcomes. And with these mega projects, a little bit is a lot. Yes,
and I can assume that one size does not fit all. In these sort of, we've got the big Olympics build happening up here in Brisbane, and it's certainly something that I think people will be learning along the journey. So we're going to dig back down a little bit deeper, and I'm going to go back to Lisa Upton's CDU. So what would help industry and vet partners collaborate more easily? So, you know, we can always collaborate, and Chris outlined earlier about that, but what do you think, from your point of view, on your side of the ledger, that would help you guys collaborate, or industry collaborate, more easily?
One of the most valuable parts of making that example about the industry and AMSA one that I brought up work more easily was being able to find the networks, and Renee mentioned this as well, to find the networks. And I have to say, the Job Skills Council the Maritime Job Skills Council that we spoke to, had such a wealth of network contacts available to be able to find the right people, to have the right conversation, to get the partnership established, and to talk about those value propositions really courageously up front. And then it was one of the things that we found difficult was that there wasn't a clear roadmap for us that we could use or follow if we wanted to progress it in a consistent way. So I think that a lot of the work that Powering Skills organisation is doing around frameworks and toolkits that we can use will help make it very clear what each step of the journey might look like, and help us expand our thinking so that we can draw on everybody else's expertise in a totality. One of my visions is always to build capability in everything that I'm doing. I'm always looking for opportunities for people to learn something. I'm always happy, even if things go badly, we still learn something. Even if the partnership doesn't come to full fruition, we've all still learned something, and nothing's ever wasted. And having a vision for how that might go, and an appreciation that iteration needs to be tolerated, more time and money might be needed, and a preparation for that, and an exit strategy for if, for whatever reason, our outcomes aren't coming to us through the process, a preparedness to be able to sunset that partnership or reevaluate it and come back with a new set of fresh eyes.
Exit strategy. That's something, you would not normally think of. So, for people on this call, I'd be noting that down is, often evaluation, exit strategy, those sort of things are something that we don't think about until a lot later. Vicky, do you have anything to add that? So industry and vet partners collaborating more easily?
I agree. I think the framework and the toolkits that we're rolling out now will be of enormous benefit. It feels like, as I mentioned before, sometimes it's not someone's full-time job to be doing this. So it feels like you're reinventing the wheel every time, or you may not do it from an industry point of view for a couple of years, and then you're back and it's like, all right, what do we need to do here? So I feel like that will be absolutely critical. Anything that makes it easier, there's, standard templates, but getting that agreement up front and agreed understanding. I agree with Ross, like listening to start with rather than coming with a predetermined solution on both sides. Often people will walk away from a collaboration because they feel like the gap is too big, when often the gap is not that big. It's just that we need to listen and understand what the other person's actually asking for. So I think, having something that actually makes you step through that process, it seems really simple, but I think, again, because people don't always do this all day, every day, it will really make a difference in how we operate.
So I'm going to go back to Ross. So what's currently keeping industry vet partnerships on the edge of the system, and what would bring them into core business? So what sort of governance and resourcing and cultural conditions have to be in place in your organisation for this to happen? You might want to touch upon that.
Yeah, I think before we even get to that stage, I think we need to understand our role in a lot of these projects. Okay, often we look at our training that people come to us to get a qualification if it's individual students. When we're working with industry, we're becoming part of we're a very small widget in a supply chain, and Chris can probably relate to this better than anyone else. We're working, and Chris would be working with incredibly tight timelines for these projects. That we have to understand that we're part of that supply chain, and we have to have the appropriate processes in place to be able to respond in a timely manner. And the clients, the industry, they're not going to wait for the training. When you've got a wage bill of $1 million a week, or something, or you've got a truck sitting there that's costing you $10,000 an hour, or a crane, you need to have your solution there ready to go and in place. And and with technology changing like it is at the moment, often if you go in there with an accredited training solution, it's going to be too slow. Sometimes you just have to go in and train, get them up to speed, and then worry about that at a later date. I know it sort of goes against a lot of the governance and other parts of what we do, but we have to understand that with industry. We're not working with a factory that's been producing the same widget for 20 years. In most cases now, we're working with something which has come off the ship. No one in Australia has seen it before. That might have been in Europe for 40 years. And all of a sudden we're expected to go in and train it. And having that capability, and it's about capability and that ability to have those skills. We're not worried about the task skills. We're about that capacity and capability to adapt and adopt in a very quick way, and having our workforce thinking that way, or our trainers and our educators thinking that way, is a really important part of what we need to do in terms of that. And with the multinationals we work with, they've got no idea about our training system. They just want workforce capability developed and done by a certain point in time. And if we can't deliver that, then we're out the door. So until we can move our mindset to be able to understand where we sit in the supply chain and what we need to do, I think we're always going to be living on the edge, because we, as training providers, if we don't think that way, we're just going to be a complete misalignment with those projects in terms of what they need. And that sounds brutal, but that's the reality of life, and you don't get second chances with a lot of these projects. So.
And so you allude to the commerciality of these relationships. And so, Renee, I'm going to jump to you as being in the middle of this mix around commerciality. How do you handle that? So the need of the apprentice between the need of the training provider, between the need of the employer.
It's a difficult beast to manage, but it's one where, I guess as the third party support in all of this, we're very active right at the start when we're signing those apprentice contracts. But the key is really to maintain consistency and contact with all parties, the RTO, the employer, and the apprentice, to ensure that compliance and obligations are being met, and there is progression through the apprenticeship or the training itself. Just sort of, circling back a little bit, and, I love that exit strategy. When things go wrong, have an exit strategy that doesn't necessarily mean dissolving that particular collaboration or partnership, but allowing that conversation to be fluid enough to redefine and go, okay, what is going wrong? Who do we need to reach out to? If it is under an apprenticeship contract, you chose an ACAP provider. If it's not APM, God help you. No, I'm joking. But but in all sincerity, reach out to the supports that are available to get things flowing and back onto track as well.
And so I'm going to go to Chris on this in this same vein, but I'm going to ask you, Chris, what is a practical tool? And I'm not talking about an angle grinder. I'm talking about what is a practical tool that you've seen that someone's brought to you that you've gone, geez, that's a great idea in this sort of partnership?
Look, we consistently get them through things like the client's own safe work method statements, the client's own risk analysis, which are consistently changing, all the way through to, manufacturer updated instructions or work instructions. So look, we're like I mentioned before, we're busybodies in the industry, and we know when things are changing, and we're having to embed that into our training. There's pieces of equipment that we use that have been around for 30 years that are consistently being updated now, and we have to have that latest and greatest, because that's what's out on site. There is no point training someone in outdated technology. It's in one ear, out the other. And what was the point of us spending our time and money with you on that? So, we're always working heavily with client, with, some of our suppliers as well. What's coming next? What's in the works? What do we need to be looking out for in the next 3, 6, 12, 24 months, so that we know, you know, we can be ahead of the curve. And that's also the same with all the new projects that are coming out. Each individual wind project has very unique challenges. You know, the environment's different across them all. It's a different landscape. It's a different set of workers. It's a different bit of technology. So we have to always be adapting to the new and the latest and greatest, and ensuring that, you know, we're asking these questions. If something hasn't changed for 3 months, we're just reiterating, hey guys, look, we've been working towards this. Has anything changed? And look, the answer is things change on a daily basis. So, you know, we're adapting to that as we need.
Yeah, it's changing fast, isn't it? Like, you know, AI, and you know, we know that that's really disrupted education over the last 2 years, but you know, exponentially in the last 6 months. So Vicky, if stronger industry vet partnerships had to become normal practice rather than an exception, what is one practical shift the sector needs to make starting now? So it could be your sector. What I would like you to do is address your sector as a business, and also maybe RTOs and what you experience.
Look, I think there's a lot, but for me, the one big practical shift we need to make is when we engage. I think we often engage far too late on both sides. So often by the time we engage, or vet or government all come together, the workforce need is by then pressing, and we're in sort of a firefight position. The solution is often half designed by one side or the other, and we're far too far down the track to understand what great looks like. Look, it's really difficult to work in the grey. I understand that, but as Ross mentioned, our operational reality is that things are moving really quickly and things shift. I think by us as industry providing more sort of strategic workforce planning data to the industry more broadly, and to vet, it will absolutely help in them being able to plan solutions for us in time, rather than turning up with, oh, we need this next week, because we just know that doesn't work. At the same time, I think vet and government need to understand that we don't know what we don't know. Here's the best that we know, and we may all need to work with that for a little bit, because that's the best case example. We're not going to be able to train to the specific technology or whatever, but what are the underlying skills that people need to work with that and to work with change, I think is also really important. But for me, if we look at workforce planning on our end, like, what are the projects that are coming? Where are they? You know, what keeps me awake at night in my role is, you know, we're walking into an incredibly skill short market in regional areas, which we know are more challenging, and in markets like Western Australia and North Queensland, where there's already competition with other industry. So how do we make sure that our pathways are smooth, and also we're flexible enough to move with things? So things like recognised prior learning, like, some of this stuff is different, I get that, but we need to be more flexible in how we address those things. And it's challenging, you know, again, I'm expert, there's still that sort of, we have to go through the whole process, but it's just not going to work for the timeframes that we have. So look, I think for me, it's engaging early, engaging often. But also, if you think about, we often try to solve this employer by employer, and I don't think that's our answer at the moment. We need to come together as an industry and say, we have a problem. How do we partner with vet more broadly to solve it? So, yeah, I was really fortunate when I worked in the mining industry for 12 years to be part of the vet collaboration, which the mining industry collaborated with South Metro TAFE and the government to come up with the automation quals. So we could see coming down the line that there were less entry pathways into mining because of automation. So your standard roles of coming in through a haul truck driver were no longer there. So how do we build pathways? So that was an early engagement, and we had the right people at the table with clear governance, clear structure, but it was industry working together with TAFE and others to make sure that we had the right solution on the table. And yes, it was painful at times. I think that's where my comment comes along around language. We all wanted the same thing, but we often didn't speak in the same language around what's competence, what's capability. And I think there's also a role for VET to play in making sure industry understands why keeping quality standards in place. Like, there'll always be operational challenges, but it's important to keep this going. We're a highly regulated, high-risk industry, and that is still really important. So, yeah, I think it's not going alone. If we see a problem, how do we solve it together?
So I'm actually going to go ask each of the panel members a question about the one practical shift you would like to see. But before I go and ask that, please, to audience, if you would like to ask a question of the people on this panel, we've got great experience here. Just pop it into the chat or the Q&A, and we can address it at the end of this. So over to you, Lisa. What is the one practical shift you think is needed?
Oh, Vicky, I'm going to be extraordinarily ambitious in my one thing.
Love it.
Because, of course, my one thing isn't just one thing. What I would really appreciate seeing, appreciate's probably the wrong word, but what I would love to see is that recognition, and Ross said the word training system, and Vicky's just mentioned a couple of times recognition and mobility. I am such a passionate advocate for recognition of prior learning, and I see it time and time again that the need or want for recognition is coming down to an individual RTO or an individual industry group or an individual employer or an individual area or zone, a location, where we're dealing with training systems. So I'm talking about the defence training system, the mining training system, the aviation training system, the health training system, and the AQF training system. They all have a lot in common, but they're not actually identically the same. And Ross mentioned governance. So of course, at that governance and systemic training system level, for true pathways and mobility and recognition to unite our workforce in being able to upskill and sideways move across the nation, we really need to look at that training system level and to see where, perhaps all back to the AQF, how those other training systems align, so recognition and mobility can really be accentuated nationally.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you.
No big deal.
Chris, do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Over to you. What's the one thing?
Look, I totally agree with both Vicky and Lisa there. I think for us, the moving from a consultation to a co-design would be ideal. Too often industry and the likes of ourselves are sort of brought in at the 11th hour and, hey guys, we've had a look at this and created this. What do you think? And, we sit down and we go, where's this come from? What's this? And what's the outcome for this? So I think, and we are starting to move towards it. There has been a lot of power of work, I guess, done from Powering Skills towards this. So we are slowly moving towards it. But just that, having everyone around a table and actually getting exactly what's needed, and then how do we get to this? Not this is what we think would be the best. Now just make it work.
Renee.
Coming from I guess the apprenticeship perspective, it would be being clear on the boundaries, so to ensure that compliance is met by all parties and that things are delivered upon, and be bold, have the tough conversations. I think a lot of times I have seen good, potentially great collaborative partnerships fall over simply because someone did not mention that people had to be released from normal work duty for 3 hours per week. Something so simple. We don't have to be afraid of compliance.
Excellent. Thank you. And Dr. Digby.
I think, we need to understand that we're not the keepers of knowledge anymore. We need to move to a shift to where we're the facilitators of learning. And to do that effectively, we need to collaborate to innovate. Simple as that.
Yep, I like that.
Collaborate across
that's a
across
t-shirt.
training providers. We need to. These projects are so big that a lot of the things we work on now, that no single provider can do everything, and we've got to be smart as a training system to meet those needs, so we can show the productivity benefits that we're giving the economy, let alone everyone else. But I think, we've got to collaborate to innovate and understand our role.
Yeah, definitely. Some of the things I've heard here today, and there's still time, people, if you want to put questions in. So I think today we've really looked at the case for what makes better industry vet collaboration and what it could look like. And it's great to hear that there's some successful stories and that there's people actually making inroads into this. I love today people talking about exit strategies. I'll say that as the third time. Engaging early is really what I learnt today. And then I liked what Chris said about from consultation to co-design. I think that is something that needs to happen in all different places, in all different businesses, from consultation and co-design. I really love that. Deciding on what is your common language and maybe understanding where your starting point is, or on that common language is something really important that came up a few times today. Building trust. Trust is really important. Those relationships that you have with people, and I'm sure in your industries, and the reason why you're here is that you are people that have those trusted relationships around you. And looking at the whole system is really important as well. So just to also sum up, so Partnered is in that PSO has developed, gives us a structure to build from as well. So these sort of frameworks. And the insights today will go directly into our thinking around that and where the framework can be applied. Often, we here at Jobs and Skills Councils, and Lisa, thank you so much for the plug on Jobs and Skills Councils and what we do as a whole, in recognition of that, because, and please reach out if we can help people on the call in any way, because that is definitely something that we do, and that's relationship build. That's part of our role. So if there's nothing else, so if you pull back up the slide, we do have a question. Sorry, Ros Dixon. Okay,
Hi.
There you go.
Can you hear me? Sorry, I would put
can.
it in the chat or the Q&A,
That's right.
but I have no access at the moment for some technical reason. The
That's
chat
right.
saying the chat is saying to me it'll only be available during the meeting, but I see other members posting in the chat, and I cannot find the Q&A menu, which
That's
differs
right.
to yesterday. So I come from a dual trades background, and my first trade in the 80s was as a radio mechanic with study at QUT, QIT on top of that in telecommunications, computing and other things. Historically, there's been a division between the JSC for PSO and the JSC for what was it? Future Skills Organisation. And if you actually look through it, in my original trade, it still mimics the structure that was there, that large telcos went with the FSO, but rail and electricity industry and the communications and radio went with PSO. But we're getting into a point, and I've had a look at the Powering Skills Organisation. It looks like the proposal for the electrical trade is, and I've had to go back and become a mature age apprentice to get a full electrical license, and I did that in my 40s. And I've just spent a year teaching at TAFE as a foundation educator. So trying to pull all this future together and collaboration and partnerships. I've also been an employer. I'm back in my own small business for a time. How do we clean it up? And I noticed the proposed electrical license is now pretty much stripped of electives. Let's get back to basics in the electrical trade. How does that get across other trades like automotive in a different JSC that has the same safety requirements? Radio communications can involve racks and racks of equipment with mains wiring inside it. But I've been through the RPL process and could not receive credit for any fixed wiring and equipment because it wasn't in a building. So as a strategy, if an employer wanted to partner with a TAFE and help create a course for say cyber physical systems, where there's telecommunication, there's process control, but there's also electrical licensing. Are we sort of a bit hamstrung by having the JSCs in tall stylos still with cross JSC duplication? How do we partner?
That's a fabulous question, Roz. And I'll preface this with saying that I'm not technical, but I will also say that there is a huge recognition of this across the Jobs and Skills Council system. And Power and Skills Organisation was one of the last Jobs and Skills Councils formed. They said, hey, we really need to have a standalone one for energy. And Jobs and Skills Councils it's actually a relationship building organisation. Yes, we have training packages at our core, but it's about building the relationships. And I, hand on heart, say that something that we work very hard on at PSO, and I do know other Jobs and Skills Councils do the same, is building that relationships. One other thing that is necessary for this model is consultation. So part of the consultation work that we do, for example, at Power and Skills Organisation, we run open technical advisory groups where people can come, anyone can come, if you follow our website, anyone can come and put their 2 cents in exactly those things that you've spoken about today. And then we also do wide consultation. At the same time, we also partner with FSO. We do know that the ICT package has big crossovers with ours, and we don't make a decision if some of our stuff sits in ICT. We don't make a decision without collaborating with our partners at FSO, at Build Skills, at ISA, at MISA, at AusMASA, all those and all the others, all the Jobs and Skills Councils. We're very, very much mindful that there is that crossover that happens. And, I'm in a meeting this afternoon with Jobs and Skills Councils in there yesterday about another key topic. So I would say, Roz, for you, become a member of the committee, and Nigel, I see, will reach out about the context of a UEE training package. Nigel Hayward is on our team. He'll reach out to you, but the mechanisms are different. From before, there were closed rooms of people making ideas without big consultation. That is no longer the case. So keep sign up to the Jobs and Skills Council websites, get updates and what happens, but also be part of the voice of those committees when there's something offered. And there's also on most of those websites an opportunity for you to write in and put your ideas forward and speak to someone. So it's very open collaboration, this model, as compared to before.
I am signed up to various job skills updates. I was encouraged to do that during my TAE studies, which is really good.
Yes. So Roz, Nigel will reach out to you. Yeah. Excellent. So if there's nothing more, Kai, can you bring up the slide? Oh, I'll share it. Sorry, I can share from my end.
Yeah, we've got one more question from Shannon and Vicky.
Shannon in Q&A?
In the Q&A, yeah.
I'll have a look in there. I'll go over there. Okay. Right. This is one for the panel. Get your thinking caps on. What should be in place to ensure that busy RTOs are not relying on didactic equipment manufacturers to ensure their equipment is aligned with industry best practice? What work is being done with the didactic equipment manufacturers to ensure their products are aligned to industry? Who would like to take that?
I can answer it a little bit from our side, because we do use some didactic equipment, and what we've done as an RTO is we've literally just leveraged our clients and spoken to them and said, hey guys, what have you got in terms of a small electrical system that we can have to show this example, and have you got a hydraulic system that we can have, or can you assist us with some skill in building it? And what we've actually done as part of it is we get our trainers involved with building this equipment, so that it's twofold. They're learning the equipment, they're learning how to build it, so when they're teaching people about the equipment and what it does and how it works, they've got that relevant knowledge behind it. But look, it's a tough question, because there's not a huge amount of companies out there that can make the training rigs, they are also quite expensive. So, I think for most private RTO, as an example, we pretty much use our skills and knowledge as we possibly can to make it as relevant as we can to what we need to have out there for our participants.
Thank you. There's a question, does this QR code link us to the toolkit templates? Kaya, do you have an answer for that? Or can someone put the answer to that into the chat?
Yep. Yes, it does. It's all on the same page. Yep.
Excellent, excellent. So on here, you go register for your next session. There's framework, toolkit, and resources here. The session recording will be shared in 48 hours. So please add that in. And if you ever, so for example, Roz, you, for example, if you would like to stay in touch or get someone to speak to you, or Nigel's going to reach out to you, you're getting special treatment. So info@poweringskills.com.au. You can go through. I'd like to give very special thanks to all the panel members today in giving up your time to come be part of this program. I also would like to do a bit of a plug on our website. There's 2 fantastic reports that were the pre-work to this on Vet Blueprint, which really talks about everything RTOs, case studies, the problems that people, that we actually, some of them were addressed today, and sort of built out this end product. So if you want a really good read, I'm particularly proud of the team and how they pulled that together. So there's journey mapping, all sorts of things. So thank you very much. Thank you for the time today. And we'll see you next time. Bye.